we're going to start the festivities with a 12-minute film entitled The Future of O'Hare. And following that, we will have our panel discussion. Jay Doherty has given me a whole bunch of, if you want to ask a question, right now we have around 70, no guarantees, but after the video, Jay or Troop D or one of us will go around and we'll pick up some more of the questions. So, without any further ado, we got the film ready. Let's roll the film.
O'Hare Airport, it is so much part of our lives here in the Chicago area. It is so vast and huge, it is impossible to imagine what our lives would be like without it. Hi, I'm Bob Wallace, and even the statistics are huge. 900,000 flight operations a year out of O'Hare. 72 million people fly in and out of here. 55% of those people are on connecting flights. They're just passing through. Now, that's due to a number of reasons. One, our location right here in the middle of the country. And two, we are home to two of the largest commercial airlines in the world, American Airlines and United Airlines. Now, they not only compete with each other, but they compete with the 53 other airlines that operate out of O'Hare. And together, they serve 210 destinations around the globe. Now, that is huge.
I don't think people know how huge it is physically, nor how important it is to the economy of our region. This facility produces about $38 billion of economic activity on an annual basis and more than 450,000 jobs.
And what does O'Hare mean to the economy of Chicago and the surrounding area?
It is the single most important economic engine in our region. Without this facility, we could fall behind the economy of the region and the economy of the rest of the world.
So what do we have to do?
We've got to not only maintain it, but we've got to build on it and expand it.
So it's no wonder that Mayor Daley's administration has crafted a bold vision for tomorrow's O'Hare. They're doing everything possible to keep this economic engine finely tuned. And they've concluded that after 50 years of stunning performance, this place needs some work. Even at this fantastic pace, O'Hare still runs very well, with few delays, when the weather's good. But O'Hare's got one big weakness the Department of Aviation wants to fix.
Before O'Hare became the world's busiest airport, it was a manufacturing plant for military airplanes and Douglas Manufacturing. So the airfield was laid out to support military aircraft operations. In that day, those were propeller-driven planes, and they needed to operate in all types of weather conditions and all types of crosswind conditions. So they laid out the runway to handle whichever way the wind was coming. So they had 3 intersecting runways on the North Airfield. But they only used one, they only needed one, and they all crisscrossed. Well, when O'Hare turned into an airport, we maintained that crisscrossing pattern on the South Airfield in order to have parallel runways, or 2 sets of parallel runways. But today, that's just not as efficient as it can be.
The problem here is you got all these crisscrossing runways now, and you want to make them into parallel runways. And for instance, Atlanta's Hartsfield Airport, they have parallel runways now. They handle more flights than you do, and their overall footprint is smaller.
We led the way for decades, but those more modern airports learned that parallel runway operations are more efficient, safer, and can achieve greater level of operating capacity. So Dallas and Atlanta designed it correctly from the start. We inherited this crossing runway layout from the military and build on that. Now it's time to modernize our airfield layout.
The big problem at O'Hare, the one that's making all the news, is delay. As we said, it's usually not a problem except in bad weather, but, well, we all know about Chicago's weather. It turns out that a very important factor in an airport's ability to withstand rough weather is the configuration of its runways. Modern airfields have parallel runways, and that allows for simultaneous takeoffs and landings in a way that crisscrossed runways won't permit, especially when the visibility's low. And when the tower has to reduce the number of operations, it means only one thing: delay. So everything's here. I mean, this will eliminate delays, this new system.
Well, the only place to eliminate delays is here. The problem of delays is the crossing runways. You can't solve the delay problem here somewhere else by adding a runway somewhere else. It has to be added where the existing airfield is and make it more efficient. The infrastructure's here, the demand's here, and the money's here. The airlines and the passenger facility charge would pay for this development. We can't solve this problem at another airport. The region has several airports that are underutilized today. The demand is here. The biggest growth that we're experiencing today is international traffic. Not everybody coming from Europe or the Pacific are heading to Chicago, but they come to Chicago's O'Hare because of the number of flights served out of O'Hare, the number of destinations, and frequency.
The people are here.
The people are here and the demand is here. The problem is here and it has to be solved here.
The reconfiguration project will be broken into 4 separate phases under Mayor Daley's proposal. First, a new east-west runway will be built along the airport's northern edge.
That begins to create our parallel configuration. You see in this phasing chart 1, 2, 3 parallel runways.
Okay.
The next phase, we move to the relocation or the decommissioning of existing runways. The first runway we decommission is the 1836 on South Runway. That would be relocated to the South Airfield, closely spaced to an existing 9 right runway.
Okay.
I say it's closely spaced because it in effect is one runway, but it's 2 pieces of pavement operating together, performing the function of one runway.
Yeah, I got you.
Because one runway would be dedicated to departures, and the other runway would be dedicated to arrivals. That allows for a more efficient and safer use of that runway. The next phase is to relocate 14 left, 32 right, one of our northwest runways. That would be relocated, again, to a closely spaced position on the north side of the airfield and create a 9 left, 27 right arrival runway. Same concept as on the south that I just described to you. We would be separating mixed traffic. One runway would be dedicated to departure traffic while the other one would be used for arrival traffic. Again, creating greater flexibility, efficiency, and safety for the air traffic and the movement of aircraft. You can imagine that when a runway is used for both arrival and departures, if a plane is arriving, the departure aircraft has to wait on a hold pad or a taxiway until the landing has occurred, and then it'll take time to taxi onto the takeoff position, wait final clearance from the tower, and begin its takeoff.
As a passenger, I know the situation well.
The next phase would be to relocate our longest runway today, 14 right, 32 left, to the south, where we would build another arrival runway on the furthest south boundary of our airport. When we relocate our longest runway, we need to gain that length back. We gain that length back by extending some of the existing runways. When we build out the runways and create what is in essence the ability to handle quadruple stream of arrivals in the future, we also would be increasing the capacity of the airport as well as reducing delay and congestion. The airfield layout that I've just described to you would reduce our delays by as much as 79% in all weather conditions and 95% in bad weather conditions. As I mentioned before, by having a reliable set of parallel runways, we can maintain the same level of capacity regardless of the weather.
So we got to get efficient to survive.
Airports compete, and we compete with other hub airports. We compete with Atlanta, we compete with Dallas, St. Louis, Denver, Minneapolis, Detroit. We need to have a more modern airfield layout in order to effectively compete and in order to maintain O'Hare's vital economic role it plays for the region.
Now, in airport jargon, an airport is divided into 2 very separate and different worlds. There is airside, which is behind me, beyond security, where the planes are, and so far we've spent most of our time talking about that. But there's another whole part of a terminal. It's over here, on the other side of security. This is called landside. Now, it doesn't really take a rocket science to figure out that even if you have the most efficient runways in the world, if you don't have the roads, the terminals, the parking, the people movers, all the stuff that makes an airport work, that's all for naught. So Mayor Daley said, if we're going to fix O'Hare, let's go all the way. Make it easier to get here, and once you get here, make it easier to get around. About a year ago, the city announced an aggressive new program called World Gateway, which calls for building new terminals and gates and some fresh thinking about how traffic in and around the terminals is managed. The mayor's airport plan now encompasses those ideas and expands upon them to include a whole new doorway to O'Hare.
As business people, it's difficult to get goods and services through the area. It's difficult for employees to get to and from work on a timely basis. You know, and then from a quality of life standpoint, you know, having trucks and cars backed up in traffic would increase air pollution rather than having them move freely through the region. Allow us to get home to our dinners and to our social events and time with our family more expediently. So I think there's a lot of benefit to the communities to have western access that would reduce traffic congestion. I think if we look at, and if you were to talk to many of the members of our organization and many of the businesses that locate, the primary reason that they locate here is because of the proximity to the airport. If you're not moving forward, you're moving back, and moving back would be as detrimental to the area and lost business and lost tax revenues as would any type of expansion that might take businesses out. So, and we have to strike a balance that allows O'Hare to maintain its position, at the same time trying to maintain the businesses that currently thrive around the airport.
But a western access point is only part of the plan. Public transportation links to the airport have to be strengthened, or the increased capacity of the airport will cause even worse traffic on the roads. So the plan calls for extensions of the O'Hare Blue Line into the northwest suburbs, as well as express rail service from downtown to O'Hare and Midway airports, and the Chicago South Shore Railroad into the Gary Airport. There will also be improvements to the existing highway system, such as new interchanges to keep the traffic flowing more smoothly, and the proposed completion of the Elgin-O'Hare Expressway. By the way, international travel is a major factor in all of this expansion and rehabilitation. International visitors and conventioneers contribute 5 to 6 times more than domestic travelers to our economy, and the competition for the lucrative international market keeps heating up. The international aviation business is changing so quickly with acquisitions and world partnerships, it's hard to keep track. For airports like O'Hare, it can be a fantastic opportunity if the terminals and the infrastructure are flexible and ready.
This is a huge plan, and rightfully so, because if I ever came out with a limited plan, that you're talking about not even solving anything. And so you have to solve a number of issues there, and not just one issue. Basically, when you look at it, it basically brings more benefits, both of realignment of the runways, reduces the noise pollution, reaffirms noise abatement, what we're doing, and at the same time gives western access, economic development here, as well as dealing with the congestion of traffic. One of the problems around here, if you talk to any suburban red, is the traffic around here is getting worse. And then it deals with mass transit, which they need right here in the Northwest Corridor as well. And this is going to be fully debated and looked at, and rightfully so. And that requires, this is a holistic approach to the issue of O'Hare Field and the surrounding communities.
Now, you no doubt know there are some people who say the best way to solve the flight delay problem is to build a whole new airport. But Mayor Daley says that will not solve the flight delay problem here at O'Hare. Now, the fastest and most cost-effective way, the mayor says, of doing that is to make a serious investment in this facility that's already here, not by neglecting it and letting it decline. Realigning these runways and rebuilding the airport's terminals for 21st century aviation brings continued prosperity to the communities right around O'Hare, the state, the entire region. And maybe that's best stated in hard numbers. This plan means yet another 195,000 jobs in the region and $18 billion in increased annual activity for the entire area. That's why people in the know are saying we should get started right away.
The time for action is now. Gridlock and the stalemate that's been created by the local political situation here has to be broken. Congress has said they'll break it if we don't. Congress has asked for us to come up with a local solution by September 1st. Last year, 1 in 4 flights were either delayed or canceled. That's unacceptable. Fixing the problem at O'Hare will do more than any other project around the country to solve the nation's delay and congestion problem in the nation's air transportation system. Those people who believe in this project should show their support by contacting their congressman and Governor Ryan's office before September 1st.
The most important infrastructure undertaking under Mayor Richard M. Daley is about to get underway: the expansion of O'Hare International Airport. It is a massive undertaking. The City Club of Chicago has invited 3 of the city's key transportation and construction leaders to tell us more about these plans. First, I'd like if you could come on up when I mention your name, Frank Cruzy, President of Chicago Transit Authority. Secondly, Commissioner of the Chicago Department of Transportation, Miguel Discoto. Commissioner? Third, Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Aviation, John Harris. John? Miguel Discoto was appointed Commissioner of the Chicago Department of Transportation last December, after serving 2 years as Deputy Chief of Staff to Mayor Richard Daley, where he was responsible for all infrastructure and city building projects. As Transportation Commissioner, he is responsible for the management of Chicago's ground transportation system and regulation of the public way. John Harris has some very impressive credentials, beginning with his current post, First Deputy Commissioner of the Department of Aviation. In this capacity, he coordinates and oversees the day-to-day operations of the Departments of Personnel, Finance, Planning and Development, and Operations of the world's busiest airport system. He actually is in his second tour of duty with aviation, having served as Chief of Staff from 1992 to 1995. Between those 2 tours of duty, John served as Deputy Superintendent of Administrative Services in the Chicago Police Department. He holds an undergraduate degree from Northwestern and a law degree from Loyola University. Frank Cruzy will be celebrating his 4th anniversary as head of the nation's 2nd largest public transportation system, the Chicago Transit Authority. Prior to taking control of the CTA in September 1997, Frank was Assistant United States Secretary for Transportation Policy and Principal Advisor to 2 U.S. Secretaries of Transportation under President Bill Clinton, Federico Pena and Rodney Slater. Still earlier, he was one of the principal advisors to Mayor Daley, as Mayor Daley gradually climbed the ranks from state senator to state's attorney and then mayor. Frank has been with him all the way. Now, Dr. Green, why don't you come on up and people can ask their questions. A lot of people handed me some questions, so if you want to start out with those, and they're also just come on up to the microphone. Paul?
Yeah, let me make one suggestion, Jay. I think there were a few people you didn't introduce here.
Well, why don't you go ahead? Go ahead. I was just waiting to see if Alderman Terrace was just going to stand up, because I read it just like he wrote it for me.
Well, I guess if you want to ask a question face to face, go to the microphone stand right behind Alderman Nataris. If you want to move, if you like, though what happens in the city council will not happen here. But I have several questions here that I will start off with, and again, I will make the offer to you. Anyone want to make like an opening couple of minutes, comment on the video or where we stand today? Well, let me ask the first question, and then all of you comment. I'll have you make an opening statement. Give me a couple of minutes. Where exactly, given from your point of view, given your responsibilities, where is the status of this entire future of O'Hare standing as we speak? John, why don't you go first?
Well, there's 2 significant activities that are happening as we speak. The first is we are in the midst of Governor Ryan's public hearings the process that he announced soon after the mayor delivered his proposal to him that he would be undertaking. And he has announced a series of 4 meetings, the first of which occurred last Thursday in Des Plaines City Hall. And tonight, we have the second in Naperville City Hall. And I urge you all to show up and show your support. Jay, you promised me that you'd have T-shirts at the door for all of them, but I don't see them yet. I'm assuming they'll get them on the way out. But we have another event that's sure to be an interesting evening in Bensonville on Wednesday night, followed by a last meeting in Tinley Park next week on the 27th. Congress, currently on recess, is also in the midst of undertaking legislative action that would force a solution upon the state of Illinois and the region to address the need for airport capacity and delay reduction and congestion relief. That matter, I expect, will resume in early September when Congress resumes its session.
Miguel, you have anything to add to that? Go right ahead, please.
I think that this debate on O'Hare right now has helped with the ground transportation in the sense that it is currently bringing to light a lot of transportation, mass transit, as well as surface transportation plans that have been out there for, in some cases, decades and have actually been put through a rigorous planning process and included into the regional plan. And I think what it shows is it shows that, that the city and the state have made plans over the last several years to support economic engines such as O'Hare and the vitality, in order to keep that vitality, how these surface transportation, mass transit plans have to be implemented. So for myself, I'm happy to talk about something other than WACR for a change. And I think that, you know, again, it gives a thorough airing into the issue of congestion and how mass transit and the surface transportation that I do along with Frank's Mass Transit really are partnership along with the air transportation aspect. And I think that's one of the highlights of the mayor's plan. I think really for the first time, the general public is really getting a chance to see that.
Frank, you have anything to say?
I think Miguel covered it pretty well.
Okay. Now you know why Frank's been around a long time. Okay. You see, man, learned early. Okay. The 2 questions, and I think are a lot of questions along these lines, so let's get right to them and let's not beat around the bush. Either way you want to answer them in either order, that they're almost interrelated. Number 1, how do these projects fit into a regional planning process? And number 2, are the cost estimates realistic? Volunteer to go first.
John, why don't you take number 2?
Yeah, I'll take the cost estimates, and I think cost estimates are very realistic. And Thursday night at the public hearing in Des Plaines, I was heartened to hear from the Illinois Secretary of Transportation when he went over the proposal and his critique of it, acknowledged that our cost estimates were accurate. He included additional out-of-scope items such as the World Gateway and some other roadway projects that he thought needed to be incorporated into the cost estimate. And even after that, acknowledged that the project was financially feasible. But the point to remember most is that the airport project and the proposal is funded totally by the airport and federal aviation dollars. There's no local or state tax dollars required to do the airport improvements that you've seen a presentation on earlier.
On the aspect of the regional plan, there is a 20-year regional plan that's put together every few years, and it's really the input through the Chicago Area Transportation Study. This group works with IDOT. It works with the local mayors for the region, and they need to come together with this plan because without submission of such a plan, the implementers of it are not eligible for federal funds. So this regional plan that's put forward and updated every several years makes it the area of the region eligible for the federal funds, deals with air pollution attainment issues and goals that the region has to meet. So what you see in the mayor's plan for this is he's pulled the parts of the regional plan that work in conjunction with O'Hare and really put it out there to make it one cohesive part, which it has to be. There can be really no other way on it. But again, the important part on the regional plan is that there has been buy-in all along the way from IDOT, from the suburban mayors, from other agencies that contribute to this plan every several years as we update it. So this is just really kind of a full-blown presentation on something that is forwarded every year to the federal government.
Frank, get him in the game. Why is ground transportation projects, or why are ground transportation projects so integral to this proposal? And explain how, if in fact some of these things that we're talking, especially the extension of the Blue Line, how will that directly impact the congestion around O'Hare?
I think one of the important things to remember here is Mayor Daley's plan is comprehensive. It's comprehensive in the sense that it addresses the problem of congestion in the sky, on the airport, and around the airport. And for around the airport, that means for people who are planning to go to or from the airport, whether by automobile, taxi, bus, or train, or people who need to navigate around it, but that's not their destination or their beginning point. The fact is not to address all three general areas, which on the air, at the airport, and around the airport, is not to have a plan that deserves to be called comprehensive. That's what's remarkable about this plan. The fact of the matter is lots of people, indeed most of the people in that entire corridor around O'Hare do not plan to go to O'Hare. Now, nevertheless, there are an awful lot of people there who do. There are an enormous number of jobs that are on-site and directly related to O'Hare, and that's no big secret to people here or in the region. It is the absolute economic engine of the region. Nevertheless, the fact is that regardless of whether there's a change made in O'Hare today, going into the future, it is a fact that there need to be improvements on the ground in order to reduce the congestion that has really been causing a problem in that entire region because of the booms that's been going on for decades there, largely driven, I suggest, by the economic spin-offs of O'Hare. So that needs to be addressed. What the mayor is saying is he's supportive of that comprehensive plan, even though most of those improvements, Western access, other interchange improvements and so forth, do not directly benefit the city of Chicago, but they do benefit the region. I don't know of a broader regional approach to transit, to highways, to aviation, than we're seeing here in Mayor Daley's proposal. That's what's really remarkable about it. So I think that's really key. Whether that ends up being the O'Hare Express service, which would allow express premium service from downtown, check in on a downtown location, get your boarding pass, check in your bags, and be on your way and arrive at O'Hare in less than 30 minutes. Whether that means going out to Schaumburg or beyond. The Elgin City Council just passed a resolution urging that the Blue Line extension continue out to Elgin. There are lots of opportunities here that are very, very important and address the entire northwestern region's transportation needs. And to have Mayor Daley indicate his support for that as part and parcel of this is what I think is really extraordinary.
Alderman, I always call him my alderman. Please, Alderman Nataras.
The biggest industry that is in opposition to our building a comprehensive regional transportation system are the railroads. The railroads for years have been using government subsidies to acquire land. If you were to go on a high-rise building and look down at Chicago, you'll find that it looks like a spider web. We have more railroad right-of-ways than any other city in the United States. In fact, every railroad in the United States goes through Chicago. Now, part of this comprehensive transportation system should be an objective of putting CTA or RTA, metro type local trains on all these tracks. If the tracks have to be repaired, it's a lot easier and simpler to do that. We don't have to condemn the right-of-way. And in fact, I happen to know because I've almost walked it, there is a direct railroad line between O'Hare and Midway, and I believe, as Paul just verified, there probably is a track going all the way down to Gary, Indiana. We should build a high-speed train between O'Hare, Midway, and Gary, Indiana. We can then we should also develop all of these railroad tracks, and we could then say that we will probably have the most comprehensive air and ground transportation in the world.
Well, any comment on that?
Well, I would say that Mayor Daley's plan is very comprehensive. Of course, Alderman Terrace will trump any comprehensive plan that exists in the world. He's got some very important ideas here and beyond. In fact, Commissioner D'Scoto and I are going on a field trip in the very near future with Alderman Terrace to deal with his suggestions and thoughts, which are important for this entire downtown area to improve the use of public transit. I have to say that there are a few people who are more committed to public transit than Alderman Terrace, and I thank you for that. And
if you go and tell Mayor Daley that I am trumping him,
I would,
I'm
it'll,
only here to offer an idea.
Alderman, it'll be our little secret. Appreciate that.
One could say Alderman Nataris is more noted for following suit than for trumping, but we won't go there. Next question. In the video that obviously just slapped together, I'd like to comment on this question, very good question. In that video, it makes the proposed peatone airport almost irrelevant to what you're advocating at O'Hare. Is that a fair statement, or is it in fact somehow connected with a peatone, yes or no? In other words, if they build peatone or if they don't build peatone, does everything you mentioned in this film need to come about?
We could build 12 peatones and it wouldn't reduce the delay or congestion at O'Hare. As I tried to illustrate using the graphics in the video, O'Hare is a good airport. It's not a good all-weather airport. The problem at O'Hare is that during poor visibility, low cloud ceilings, rain, snow, the air traffic controllers, in the interest of safety, take out of our inventory one of the runways that we use for arrivals. So we go from 3 arrival streams down to 2 arrival streams, much like losing a lane of traffic. That creates a ripple effect throughout the nation's airport system. And Chicago's known for the fact that if you don't like the weather, stick around an hour, it'll change. Well, that kind of unpredictability and unreliability does not provide for an efficient airfield. Putting pavement someplace other than O'Hare doesn't solve the problem regardless of how many operations we're handling at O'Hare. We lose 1/3 of our capacity when the weather changes. That'll happen regardless of how many airports. And I mentioned other airports in the region like Rockford and Gary and Milwaukee and others, and even Midway still has excess capacity. That demonstrates the fact that it's not a problem of airports in the region, it's a problem of the alignment of the airfield.
All right, I want that all to sink in, you know. So why are we arguing on all this stuff? And
We're not. We all agree.
well, obviously, at your first meeting, that friendly showed you how great town hall democracy could really be. There were several individuals in there, wearing red, I might add, that would disagree with you. Does this in effect have any direct, I mean, the hue and cry about quality of life, more noise, more crowded? I mean, are those folks just being blindly led down a path? Have they not read what you guys have written? Have they not seen what you guys have put on? I mean, why is everyone so upset? Not everyone. Why are a whole lot of people out there upset?
Well, if I just may say that I think there's a lot of reasons why they're upset, but I do share some concern because the polls and the research that I've seen and many of us have seen is that the biggest quality of life issue for the people living in and around O'Hare continues to be congestion. Congestion on the roadways in and around O'Hare. I was just at a meeting last week talking with freight carriers, shippers, businesses around O'Hare and the industrial village, Elk Grove, all these areas, and access to the airport, access to other communities around the airport, not even getting to the airport, continues to be a #1 issue for them in terms of efficiency in making dollars, and then the quality of life continues to come up time and time again, where people talk about, as the gentleman said in the video, about the fact that getting to and from work, even if you're not working at the airport, but just getting in and around that area becomes very difficult because the congestion affects your time to the point where you don't know whether to budget yourself an extra half hour, 45 minutes to get home, or to get back. So the congestion issue continues to be the number one driver that we see in a lot of polls and a lot of the research in that area. And that's why I get concerned about this issue on the Peatone, and that people miss the point that, you know, quite frankly, at transportation, we have a concern, because right now you have a great situation in O'Hare. You're approaching almost 60% of all the departures are all people who are arriving at the airport to take another flight to go out. If you take the focus off of that of O'Hare, if you decide not to improve O'Hare for efficiency, then if, in essence, if you're going to force airlines to go to another location, then O'Hare will drop back to a different category potentially in the future, where less people will be going there to make the interconnections and more people will be driving there or trying to get there for the simple fact that that's where they want to fly in and out of. And then that just forces more congestion on the roadways. The beauty of the plan is that it supports everything all the way around with the ground transportation, the mass transportation. As Frank has said, the mayor's vision then talks about O'Hare and what needs to be created there for efficiencies to all make it work together. It's a very fine balancing act, but one that certainly this plan addresses.
There are, and I will acknowledge, some people around the airport that would be impacted by the development. Our proposal and the mayor's proposal and his charge to us was to minimize those impacts, to continue to maintain our role as a good neighbor and pursue the most aggressive noise mitigation program in the country. By the end of this year, we will have invested over $394 million in home insulation programs, including over 4,500 homes and 99 schools. It's the most aggressive and the most expensive program anywhere in the country. The proposal requires the taking of some land on the northwest corner and the southwest corner. That land is approximately 400 acres, which represents approximately 5% of our existing footprint. So we've tried to minimize the impact of this proposal on the surrounding community in order to provide for the greater good. In addition, the state has asked, as well as our O'Hare Noise Compatibility Commission Chair and Technical Committee, asked us to forecast the noise impacts of a reconfigured airfield. And just last week, we released that estimated contour for the year 2015. A contour is the boundary line at 65 decibels of noise level, the standard which the FAA defines as having an impacted resident. And it showed a reduction of as much as 30% in land mass and as many as 29% of the number of homes impacted with this new configured runway 15 years from now. The reason that is because we eliminate some of the crossing runways, which eliminates that geographic area that is today impacted by runways pointing in that direction. By going to a more east-west orientation, we keep the aircraft operation, the flight path, in closer proximity to what occurs today, impacting less geographic area than we would if we left the airfield today. So this airfield does have a comprehensive scope, or this proposal, up to and including mitigation on the impacts in the surrounding community.
Okay, without going over old ground, because we're getting a little, before I ask this question about the O'Hare Express that several people want, discussed, let's clarify this issue is clarifying. It's like digging your hand in putting your hand in a bowl of oatmeal. I mean, let's see if we can get something a little concrete. Is it the argument now that you fellows who are so involved in this, that those folks who are on television in their red shirts and who have been fighting you guys for years about O'Hare expansion or reconfiguration or whatever, are they just plain wrong that it's not going to create more noise? Forget the houses, obviously, 400 acres. Some people are going to lose their homes. But leaving that aside, so we don't get into that argument, those people who are still going to be there and have their homes, are you saying there's going to be less noise?
I think empirically the data will show there is less area impacted. I would never tell an individual what he or she thinks or feels or believes as an individual personally, whether they have a tolerance or a threshold for noise. That is a very subjective issue. But let me say this. Part of our quality of life, I believe strongly, is the economic security we enjoy, the jobs we have. The businesses in those same suburbs where the residents with the red T-shirts exist are the biggest taxpayers in those regions. They're the ones that pay for the schools. They're the ones that employ the residents, build the parks, provide for public safety. All of those things are part of the quality of life equation. And I just ask them to give us an opportunity and listen to us and let us explain and ask them to recognize that part of their quality of life is from the economic security that this economic engine provides to them and their families and their neighbors.
Okay. Let that sink in. Frank, this O'Hare Express concept, do any other cities have this service comparable? And without getting into excruciating detail, how would it work?
I think you know me.
That's why I prefaced it, Frank.
Well, the short answer is yes, other cities have it, although let's make a couple of comments. One is the city of Chicago is unique in this country in having links to 2 airports through mass transit. Other cities are trying to do it. New York, for example, is working right now to try to put a ride which would not be a single ride, and would not be anywhere nearly as express service out to JFK from Manhattan. They are, right now there is work being done to actually the link up, it's been completed to link up San Francisco Airport with its system. A number of cities are doing that. The question of the premium service and express dedicated service, you look at London, Hong Kong, many of the international aviation leaders in the world do it. The beauty of our proposal, and the mayor's proposal here, is that it builds on the improvements and investments we've been able to do on the Blue Line so far. We'd be able to phase it, similar to ways in which the airport's phased in. The improvements would be phased in over time as money became available, and it has an enormous opportunity and potential. It's the kind of thing that's been talked about for years. The mayor's put his support behind it. The Federal Aviation Administration and Federal Transit Administration, 2 very key agencies, are more excited about this than I can possibly say, which is the beginning point of the difference between life and death in projects. So this is something that I think is very real. It can happen quickly, and it builds on other infrastructure improvements that we're making to the CTA, and indeed can be made in that entire corridor as we go forward.
I may not be the only one who doesn't quite understand everything about it, but are you saying that if you go to the Thompson Center and you want to go to O'Hare on the Blue Line, which is a very good way to go, you could literally check your bags in at the Thompson Center?
You could not only check your bags in, you could also get your boarding pass. Yes, both. Now, there are obvious benefits here that are remarkable. Now, one thing that's important to keep in mind here, and this is true for, I mean, I'll obviously make my plug for the Blue Line and for transit, and of course, you're right, $1.50 is the best deal in town.
Yes, it is.
But the other point to keep in mind is that from the perspective of the competitiveness of the downtown area, it's measured in terms of time, not distance. And that's why knowing how long it will take to get from downtown to the airport, you've got to budget. If you're planning to make a plane, you've got to budget the maximum amount of time it can take. So if the Kennedy's taking sometimes 50 minutes and sometimes an hour and 50 minutes, you've got to budget your entire hour and 50 minutes plus, or you run the risk of missing a plane. It is the consistency and the speed, and with the Express, it would be under 30 minutes. And so those are very, very valuable things to travelers.
Okay, I have more questions on that to see how it would work, but we're not here for that. I mean,
And let me add one thing if I may.
how would your baggage be secured? You know, they always ask you these questions. Would they have an armed guard riding on the CTA train?
It would be secured through procedures and protocols that are in place with the Federal Aviation Administration, and there would be separate baggage cars that would be provided for that. Yes, I would envision this as something that would be done through a consortium of the airlines or a private industry by and large in terms of the operation of the check-in facilities, baggage facilities. There are a lot of other elements of this that I don't want to be preempting the mayor on in his announcement.
Okay. That's very interesting stuff, and I don't know. Okay, enough of that. Couple of more questions. By the way, as you noticed, Jay, hard to believe, actually missed a couple of people. Commissioner Mike Quigley, Cook County Commissioners. Michael, are you still here? Raise your hand. Yes, he left. Well, they're probably going over the map, and we have Kitty Friedheim, the Managing Deputy Commissioner of Chicago Airport System. Kitty, are you here? Good. Okay, 2 more questions, and then maybe a quick summary. There's another very good question. Are all these proposal projects necessary only because of the mayor's planned improvement at O'Hare? In other words, you talk about the congestion for all our suburban neighbors. Many people living in Chicago put that very high on their list of concerns. Is that something that is driven only by the O'Hare project? In other words, was it the political strategy to make it comprehensive in the sense that everybody gets something out of this?
No, the answer is it's not driven solely by that, but the comprehensiveness of it makes it all function well. Let me go back to a point that John made earlier on that I think is very important and tends to get lost sight of in the conversations. O'Hare's delay problems, as John said, are due to the configurations in bad weather. So in good weather, O'Hare is running with three arrival streams generally, 3 runways used for arriving planes. When you move from good weather to bad weather, instantly the capacity of the airfield drops by 1/3 because one of those runways has to be taken out. That's just the way air traffic control works. That's just to begin with. The problem is the difficulty of bad weather. That's when O'Hare has its most delays. This addresses that, and it addresses, therefore, if you will, especially bad weather congestion. The ground transportation issues, which are the things that Miguel and I are concerned with and know something about, are problems that occur all the time. And increasingly, it's an accelerating problem of the region. The fact that it will improve access to and travel times to and from O'Hare, from all directions, incidentally, including the West, most noticeably with the Western access, is a important benefit, but it's not the only benefit, which is why the entire region, particularly people who live around O'Hare, stand to benefit enormously from the improvements on the ground side, even if they don't go into O'Hare or fly out of O'Hare at that time.
Let me just add to that. Frank had mentioned an earlier point that many of the people using the tollways and the highways around O'Hare aren't necessarily bound for O'Hare. And nonetheless, all that traffic gets commingled at our front door. We only have one door into the airport, I-190. The charts and graphs before you illustrate on the brown the collector-distributor system, the Lee Street interchange. That's part of our World Gateway program, which endeavors to expand the terminal or the gate capacity at the airport. And the Western access would provide a much-needed back door or additional door to the airport. Airport planners constantly strive to balance the air side and the land side. We want to make, with the World Gateway program, is giving us needed gates to reduce delays and enhance competition at the airport, and the airfield would give us the airfield capacity to reduce the delay and congestion, as well as meet the coming demand at whatever level it comes.
Last question, and we'll be out here by 1:30. Public administration, as some people have said, boils down to 4 words. Who pays, who gets? We spend a lot of time saying all the stuff that people are going to be getting. The film suggests, and you fellows have mentioned it, that paying for this project, which I guess we could all agree is more than a few bucks, that no taxpayer money. Are we talking Chicago, state?
On a per passenger basis, it's really not much more than a few bucks, but
that's the kind of style we in the City Club really like. You want to be our co-fundraiser chairman for the next annual dinner, please? Go ahead, John.
This entire proposal would, the airport improvements, the airfield improvements, would be funded by traditional means of airport improvement projects. We've invested billions at O'Hare and Midway in the last decade, and those costs have been borne by the proceeds of airline-backed bonds, which are based on the strength of the market, passenger facility charges collected at the airport, as well as our share of the federal AIP dollars, which are the Airport Improvement Program grant dollars that the FAA makes available to airport improvement projects around the country. So that would also be the way we would fund and finance this project. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we believe it's financially feasible, and the Secretary of Transportation for Illinois recognized on Thursday last week that it's a financially feasible proposal.
Quick follow-up question to close. Not to be held against you or to be held for you, but this is the City Club. In round numbers, give or take, chump change, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, for the complete package, everything on that screen, what's the cost?
Well, the airport improvement, the airport boundary, with the new boundary, including land acquisition, the relocation of rail lines, Irving Park Road, the acquisition and relocation of industrial and residential property, the airfield improvements, the terminal on the west side, in addition to a connecting tunnel to the existing terminal core, is estimated at $6.3 billion in 2001 dollars.
Let me add something that I think is very important. You raised the point, Paul. The question is, who pays, who gets? Let's talk about who gets. We're talking about a plan that will produce nearly 200,000 additional jobs as a result of this expansion. And secondly, will provide $16 to $19 billion per year in additional economic activity in the region. That's the kind of investment that most regions in this country wouldn't have thought twice about going forward with. And hopefully that'll be the case here, because it really is the kind of investment in the future of this entire region that is just too good to pass up.
How about a round of applause? That was